It's my fault she left. I pushed her away. I could still remember how it happened. I planned her wedding, fell in love with her, but I didn't tell her. The weekend had been held endless calls and texts about the flowers, the food, the favors. This wasn't normal. This was Elena. In the weeks leading up to the wedding, she'd call me 5 times a day with questions, critiques, changes. She was a Britdazilla, but with hearts in her eyes. And I loved her for it. My name is Maya. I'm a wedding planner. Over the past few years, I've coordinated more than 30 weddings, and even though each one was unique, there was always a predictable rhythm to them. You know, the jittery first looks, the vows that were almost messed up, the last-minute change of plans, but the wedding that I spent 6 months planning for Elena shook me to my core in ways that I never expected. When I first met her, she was like a breath of fresh air. She came to me with a vision board and 2 words: classic romance. The details were breathtaking. Flowing ivory fabrics, candlelight, flickering shadows. I was immediately on board. But as the wedding drew closer, her visions grew more specific, more intricato. Soon, her whims became demands, her critiques harsh. She questioned everything I did. It was frustrating, yes, but it was also exciting because I could see how passionate she was. I poured over every detail, every flower choice, every fabric swatch. I hired musicians to play her favorite songs. I sourced French macarons in her favorite lavender color. I wanted to make her happy. I wanted her to see how dedicated I was. On the morning of the wedding, I woke up at 5 a.m. and I was at the venue by 7 a.m. The girls were getting ready in a room upstairs. Elena, stunning in her ivory gown, her veil glowing under the soft light. I tried to focus on the schedule, the timeline, the vendors, but all I could do was steal glances at her. She was the bride and I was the help, but I could stop myself from wondering what it would be like to be that man walking her down the aisle, seeing her for the first time, taking her hand and knowing that she was only for him. As the wedding party assembled, I gave Elena a once-over. She looked beautiful. She smelled divine. I could see how much the dress meant to her. Each bead, each fold, each layer, they were all a part of her story. As the wedding march began, I took a deep breath and reminded myself that I was just the planner, making sure everything was perfect. But as I watched her walk down the aisle towards him, I couldn't help but wonder, was I just the planner or was I more? Was I a part of her story? Her smile sent a jolt through me, a warmth that spread through my chest. It was the most genuine smile I had ever seen her give. She was radiant. I stood frozen as she approached, lost in the moment. And then she did the unthinkable. She stopped in front of me. In the silence of the church, her eyes locked onto mine. She raised her hand, her fingers brushing against my cheek. And in that instant, the world around us vanished. All that mattered was the gentle touch of her hand and the depth of her gaze. It was as if she could see right through me, understanding me in a way that I had never been understood. The sincerity in her eyes sent shivers down my spine. It was more than just kindness or courtesy. It was a connection that transcended our professional relationship. When she finally pulled away, I could feel the heat rising to my cheeks. I wanted to respond to bridge the gap between us, but I couldn't find my voice. Just then, her bridesmaids began to gather around, their excited chatter pulling me back to reality. With a gentle smile, Elena turned back to them, her laughter echoing through the room. The moment was broken, leaving me with a mix of emotions and a heart that seemed to beat just a little faster. As I watched her join the others, I couldn't help but wonder what that moment had meant for her. And more importantly, what it might mean for us. The kiss was the hardest part. For weeks, Elena had fretted over its duration, its passion, its perfection. She wanted it to be a grand finale, a showstopper. I told her to keep it simple, genuine, and sweet. But she was adamant. She wanted fireworks. So as the newlyweds stood under the archway, I held my breath, hoping she wouldn't read too much into my look of concentration. In the weeks following the wedding, I waited for Elena to call me. I replayed every moment we shared in my mind, searching for clues, wondering what she was thinking. We had exchanged numbers. Our goodbyes had been warm, but she didn't mention seeing me again. And as the days turned into weeks, my hopes dwindled. I went back to my routine, organizing showers, bachelor parties, and rehearsal dinners. But Elena lingered in my thoughts. I couldn't shake the feeling that there was something between us, something that had started on that wedding day. Then one evening, a miracle happened. My phone buzzed with a text from her. "Free tonight?" I almost dropped my phone. "Any dinner plans?" I texted back, my fingers trembling. An hour later, I was at her favorite bistro, waiting, hoping that I hadn't misread the signs. When she arrived, her eyes sparkled with excitement. She slipped into the seat opposite me. "I'm glad you came," she whispered. Relief washed over me. Maybe this was a second chance, an opportunity to be more than colleagues. Over dinner, we talked for hours, not about wedding plans or floral choices, but about ourselves. She told me about her dreams, her fears, her passions. I listened intently, captivated by her, and when she looked at me, her eyes held a vulnerability that touched my soul. I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, to love her, but I held back. I was unsure if she was opening up to me because she trusted me or if she genuinely liked me. I didn't want to jeopardize our friendship. As the evening drew to a close, I walked Elena back to her car. We stood beneath the streetlight, her face bathed in gold. "Thank you," she said softly, "for tonight, for listening." She paused. "You're amazing, Maya. I'm so lucky to have you as my wedding planner." Her words were kind, but they also carried a hint of finality. I knew that she was hinting at the end of our professional relationship, and in that moment, a wave of sadness washed over me. The next morning, I received a text from Elena. "I'd like to schedule a meeting to discuss the feedback form. Is tomorrow afternoon, all right?" Her message was polite, professional, and it confirmed what I had feared. For her, this was just business. The following afternoon, I met with Elena in her office. She was dressed in a pantsuit, her hair pulled back. The room was filled with the faint scent of lavender, her signature fragrance. She handed me a feedback form, her eyes downcast. I took the form, my fingers brushing hers. The contact was brief, but it sent a jolt through me. "So," Elena began, her voice shaky, "how do you feel about the wedding?" I hesitated, torn between honesty and discretion. Should I reveal what I truly felt or stick to the script? I chose the latter. "It was perfect," I replied, my voice betraying nothing. "You were right. Everything was perfect. The flowers, the music, the cake. You created a dream wedding." I wanted to reach out, to comfort her, but I forced myself to remain distant. "Thank you," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. It was important to me. The meeting continued, but my mind was elsewhere. I thought about the stolen glances, the unspoken feelings, the almost kiss. I wanted to reach out to bridge the gap between us, but I resisted. I was hurting myself. As the meeting drew to a close, Elena stood up. "Thank you again, Maya," she said, her voice thick with emotion. "For everything?" I nodded, unable to speak. She walked toward the door, then turned back. "You really are the best," she said with a shaky smile. "I'll see you around." She left, and I was left with a heart full of longing and the bitter taste of unsaid words.